Welcome to Grew with Portia, the podcast that uncovers the hidden treasures within grief. I'm your host, Portia the producer, and I'm inviting you to join me on a transformative journey where we will exchange laughter, of course, the best medicine of them all. Reflect on cherished memories. Remember that time that the little boy grabbed my hand instead of his mother's at the amusement park? Yikes. And of course, discover gratitude while navigating one of life's hardest challenges, loss. So get ready to grow with me, Portia the producer. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Grew with Portia. I am your host, Portia Booker, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to keep it with the latest and greatest of all with Grew with Portia. So today, everybody, one of the things that I always love to talk about is how people find their groove through the most adverse circumstances that they go through. And today, I'm going to be joined by a woman who has survived what I like to call the scars that she wasn't meant to get, right? And what I mean by that is I have tattoos, right? These were on purpose. I went and got them on my own free will, but she did not. So today I really want to touch on her story and have her share with us how she continues to hold that ball of confidence all these years later. So welcome to Grew with Portia, Miss Gayle Petrillo. Gayle, how you doing today?
Good morning, Portia. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your guest this morning.
Gayle, it's an honor. When I first read about your story, I have so many questions, of course, right? But before we jump into your story, what are you grateful for today, Gayle?
Oh my gosh. So today I'm grateful for my husband of 45 years, my best friend and most avid supporter, my friends and mentors who have encouraged and supported me throughout many years and continuing today, and the beautiful weather outside here in Tucson, Arizona.
Hey, family, friends, weather. I mean, you can't go wrong, right? Because there's, the 3 F's: family, friends, and fun, right? Yeah. And I think, Gayle, I'm glad that you brought that up because I think, especially when you're going through something like what you experienced, I mean, you experienced severe burns to your body, right? Over several years ago, right? We're still in our 30s, right? And so I'm curious, Gayle, for our audience who's tuning in, what was that grief journey like for you to look at yourself in the mirror after you've kind of healed a little bit and accepted who you are and continue to do so to this day?
Yeah, so it's very interesting that you ask about how I see myself or saw myself. I covered the mirrors in my bedroom in our home for years because I felt as though I was damaged goods, and I thought people would see me as that, even though my scars are invisible, they're under my clothing. So I was burned as a toddler at 2.5 and didn't come out of hiding and share my story until I was 68 years old. So I kept that secret a very long time. And once I started sharing the secret, lifting that burden, that weight off your shoulders was so uplifting, rewarding. Writing about it was cathartic. And every day is a new day to share this story and to continue not the grieving, not the guilt, not the shame, but the gratitude.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Gayle, I love the optimism that you have, right? Because clearly something like that, as women, we live in a society, right? Let's be honest, that thrives on image, that thrives on women looking a certain way, right? Yeah. I always think of the pinup girls, right? The Betty Pages of the world, the Lucille Balls, right? I think we still have that ideological perfectionism still ingrained in our society for women. And so when you have a quote unquote not so perfect look based on these notions, I feel like it's easier for you to hide, to, not want to be seen. And I'm curious, Gayle, what was that shift in perspective for you to say, I want to become visible now? I want people to see who I really am? And also, what did it take for you to finally say, I see Gayle?
Yeah, it took a lot, let me tell you. But, it wasn't like I woke up one day and said, okay, I'm done with this. It was a gradual change, right? And so, one of the first things I think was just really tired of hiding. I hid behind my clothes. I hid behind my career. I hid behind imposter syndrome. I hid behind all these things. And little by little, I started sharing my scars, both the visible and invisible, and found very surprisingly, people leaned in because they recognized their stories in mine. And so the more I shared, whether it was one on one or one times 500, people came up to me and told me that my story resonated and told me to share more and more. So every time I speak, what I find is I share stories that I haven't shared before because I'm getting more comfortable in my own skin and in my own body. And I've learned that by sharing my story, I'm healing. But I'm also, by being vulnerable, I'm giving whoever it is in my audience the opportunity to share their story as well, because secrets weigh us down, right? And when we take those secrets off our shoulders and unburden ourselves, we open up to a whole new authentic self. And so that's what keeps me kind of doing what I'm doing, talking about my story, sharing how I've overcome different challenges, and being my full self.
And Gail, I'm glad you brought up about secrets because I mean, think about when we're children, when we're in school, right? Hey, I want to tell you a secret. I like the boy who likes to wear the bow ties to class, right? That's where it kind of what like starts for some of us. For some, it's maybe in the household. And I'm curious, Gail, what did it take also for you to say, you know what, I'm going to be seen? I'm really going to be seen for who I am and own it
Yeah,
authentically,
yeah,
right? And even, to tie into the confidence piece,
yeah.
right? Because I think so many women and also children struggle with that confidence of showing up, owning their inner weird, saying, this is who I am. So, what did that take for you?
Yeah. So, as I said, I hid forever. I wanted to be as invisible as possible. All through school, grade school, junior high, high school, and even into college. If I knew the answer to a question, I would not raise my hand. I would sit on my hands in order not to draw attention to me.
Mm.
So, really, I think the largest thing that changed for me was I was at an event and it was a fundraiser, and I was behind stage speaking to the founder of the nonprofit. Even though her nonprofit, Beads of Courage, was founded here in Tucson, it's international. And when I met her through a mutual friend, I said, Jean, I have to live vicariously through you. My gosh, you're in Japan and in London and Chicago. And so that afternoon, I said to her, so where have you been? And she looked at me and she said, I spent a couple days in the burn unit with kids in Phoenix Children's Hospital. My mouth opened, tears started rolling down my face, and we all know how timing is. The MC called me to the podium. So I look out to this audience of 200 who I knew some of them, but the only person who really knew my story or thought he did was my husband. And so I walk out and the tears are ruining my mascara and the whole 9 yards. And I said, oh my gosh, guys, I'm so sorry. I was backstage with Jean. She shared that she was with burn kids in Phoenix. I'm in Tucson. I wish my family and I had that kind of support when I was burned as a child. There was total dead silence. And because I hadn't done a lot of speaking, I didn't know how to use that silence to my advantage. And I just went right on with the program. And there was a woman in the audience who came up to me after. She's very well known here in town, but I didn't know her. And she said, girl, you got a story to tell. And I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, why don't we have coffee and I'll share my story? I was like, fine. So that was September 12th of 2019. By Christmas, she had gotten my story out of me because the timing, I guess, was just right. And by that February, the world shut down with COVID and I started typing. And it was so cathartic and it became a children's book. And that's really what started my self confidence. Because if you can stand on stage in front of a podium in front of 200 people and share tears, that's confidence. I had never had that before. And so it just spurred in me the need, the impact of sharing my story and how I will heal from it, and how, as I said earlier, the people in my audience are able to heal as well.
When you gave them permission, Gayle, because you came up on stage vulnerable, tears coming down your eyes. Good thing maybe the snot wasn't running where you could have lassoed
Right?
some of those people.
No Kleenex. Yeah.
It's probably a good thing it wasn't that, but you gave them, you opened the door for that level of vulnerability, that level of sharing, that level of being visible,
Yeah.
literally visible. And I'm
Literally.
curious, Gayle, when people would ask you about your burn story or like if they could see anything, what would you tell them?
Yeah. So that's so interesting. If people want to see them, I don't show it to them because I don't really want to know what the reaction is. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I see them all the time. And they're not pretty. But when people ask me to share my story and expound on how I felt self confidence, the first thing I talk about is getting braces as a 50-year-old woman. I had buck teeth, crooked teeth. I never smiled. I always talked like this. Always, 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 until that day on stage. And that spurred me because I had gotten braces and it let me be my whole self. And what I've learned is that by sharing my smile, it's contagious, right? I'm
Oh,
smiling,
yeah.
smile right back. And so we make people's day by smiling and sharing that. And so, yeah, it's just, I love that people are curious. And I love that people feel, because I'm open to listening to them, that and sharing, that they feel comfortable saying, and what did you do after? And do you remember the pain? And blah, 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 right? The other interesting thing I will add is, so I don't know if you know the clothing line Cabi, Cabi. I have a girlfriend who sells it. It's trunk show. And so over the many years, I've known her 25 or so years, I would have a party, or I'd go to a friend's house and have a party, or she would have a party at her house. And I'd always go into the bathroom and change my clothes and come out and go, well, what do you think of this? Where everyone else, and we tease, it's a girls get naked party, right? We don't truly get naked, but we run around in our bra and our undies and, like share everything. And I didn't do that until last year. And now I run around on my undies and it's like nobody goes, oh my God, what's that? Or look at you, because now people know my story. And I don't feel self-conscious because I don't feel like people are staring. And most people are like, until we see you like this, we never would have understood totally. And so it's that awakening of self that builds that confidence, gets rid of that self-doubt.
Well, you shed several layers,
I did.
right? The identity that you had before you decided to stand up at that podium and say, I wish that this is what my family had when I was burned as a kid. Right. So, really, it's as though, Gayle, this was the catalyst that you needed in order to step fully into who you are today. Right. To be free, right. To be around these other women and say, look, I'm running around in my underwear. I mean, if we're flinging our bras around like slingshots, that's okay. But
So,
it's girls just want to have fun, authentic fun, without shame, without guilt.
yes, yes. It's so freeing. And again, it enables other people to be freeing, right? Girls who have large breasts, girls who have tiny breasts, girls who have tummies, right? If we're all out there showing our stuff, nobody's like, oh, don't look at me. It's out there. And that to me is so fulfilling that I'm helping other people be comfortable in their own bodies, right?
Yeah.
Because how many of us are 5'6" and blonde hair and blue eyes and whatever, 115 pounds? Not very many of us. And as we age, we get the wrinkles and we get the tummies and we get the sagging boobs and everything that goes with it. And so I think one of my premises now is we are not alone. And once we recognize we are not alone, whether it's we've experienced trauma, who hasn't, we have a story to share, who doesn't, we are not perfect in our bodies, in our brains, in our comments, who is. And once we're able to unseal that envelope and let all that out, we are our authentic selves.
Yeah, there's no restriction. You're no longer letting society's criticism hold you prisoner,
Right.
right?
Right.
You see yourself for who you are in the mirror,
Yep.
whether you have tattoos, stretch marks, extra smile lines in your face,
Yep.
whatever. You own who you are and you're okay with it.
Right.
I mean, essentially, you've become visible not only just to the world, but to yourself. And Gail, I'm curious, you have a book called Become Visible. And I'm curious, what was the writing process like? I know you were writing it probably during COVID, but how did you really settle on the title Becoming Visible? Because I think this is really the theme to your whole story.
Right. So the first book was called The Accident, and it was just me starting to tell the story. And it's meant for older kids, young adults, because I talk about bullying and other such things. When I've spoken, people were telling me that they were resonating with my story. And that really became the impetus behind becoming visible. Because as I said, I hid for so many years. I wanted to be as invisible as I could. So being this new person out in front on stage behind a podium, this person speaking at book clubs and rotaries, and I was the keynote address at a high school graduation last year in front of 500 people. I never would have imagined me doing that. And I don't do it because I want the spotlight. I do it because by sharing my story, I'm empowering others to recognize that they're not alone. That when we share our stories, we take that burden and those secrets off our shoulders and we become our authentic self. So, becoming visible is exactly that. It was peeling the layers off of the invisibility to become visible, to share how I've overcome fears and phobias and self doubt and inferiority complex, all of that. And the result is I'm visible. I raise my hand. I am board chair of the American Red Cross of Southern Arizona. I lead meetings and retreats, and I speak for them. And that this new person who I am just relishes that, just relishes in that, because little kids recognize that they don't have to be bullied and why bullies bully. Older people recognize that whether it's a divorce or losing a family member or whatever their trauma is, they can get behind that. They can get beyond that. And that's what's crucial. Our stories are all different. The way we recover is different. But it's so important, I think, for all of us to recognize that we are not alone. some part of each of our story resonates with others, and it enables them to recognize that they too can overcome those challenges, whatever those challenges are.
And I think, Gail, you hit it on the head. We tend to think we're alone when we're going through something,
Yes.
right? The limiting beliefs that we have about ourselves when we're holding on to the secrets,
Yeah.
holding on to the shame, the woulda, coulda, shouldas. What will my family think when I start talking about this?
Right.
Right? Will I bring shame to their name?
Yeah.
Right? Will I get ostracized? So, it's those barriers that we have to work through as
Right.
we own who we are authentically
Right.
and be okay with that.
I also got honestly very tired of having FOMO. You've heard of
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
FOMO, fear of missing out. I was always in the background. I
Mm.
got tired of being in the background. I finally had the courage to stand up and say, I have an opinion about that. Not in your face, but just, hey, have you thought about this? And I use those tools in my coaching. And it's just, you watch people's eyes broaden and you watch them light up. And it's so empowering. I love it.
Well, it is because you have stepped into who you are, that new version, that new identity that takes all those pieces that were once hidden, that were
Yeah.
once shame written, that were once timid, where
Yeah.
now you own it confidently and you're
Right.
able to transfer that level of confidence to your clients by showing up every single day. Like, look, this is what I live with,
Yeah.
and I've learned to love this version of Gayle through opening up about my story, right?
Right. Right. No, exactly.
Well, Gayle, for our audience who's tuning in, I'm sure there's going to be people that want to connect with you, get a copy of your book, maybe even, work with you on a one-on-one basis, coaching. How can they get a hold of you? What's your social media and all of that good stuff?
Yeah. Thank you so much. So, Becoming Visible is available on my website, first spelled out, impressions plural, 60, no, one, sorry. First impressions spelled out, the number 1.com. So firstimpressions1.com is my website. You can also get the book available through my publisher, booklocker.com, with a /13819. And my phone number is 602-621-0042.
All right. So everybody, you can find Gayle from her website. You can probably just do a simple Google search as well. I always tell everybody, look, Google is amazing now. It's like the best phone book that was ever invented. You can find anybody anywhere. Well, Gayle, we're going to be wrapping up here soon. And I thank you so much for sharing your story. I can see the confidence literally beaming off of you because I think so many people needed to hear your story to reignite that their story matters, that they're not alone in the muck of what their current seat of occupancy may look like. And Gayle, for our audience who's tuning in, if there's somebody out there who's ready to take that baton and own their story, what words of wisdom can you share with them today?
When we share our story, we heal. We also give people permission to share their story, to be vulnerable so that they too can heal. And I would love to leave your audience with smile. Share your smiles because they're the good kind of contagious. And what you reap from that makes your day and everyone else's day around you.
Well, everybody, that was Miss Gayle Petrillo that you heard from. And that concludes another episode from Grew with Portia. Thanks for listening. And until next time, everybody, peace and hair grease. And don't forget, smiling is indeed contagious.